The Slow Tide. A healing fiction novel. Chapter 2, Low Tide. Maya woke to light, soft, diffused, the kind that meant morning had arrived without urgency. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling was wrong. The sounds were wrong. Everything was wrapped in an unfamiliar stillness that made her heart race before her brain caught up with the simple truth. She was in Thornberry Bay. She was safe. She had nowhere to be. The realization should have been calming, but instead, it triggered a spike of anxiety that had her sitting upright in bed, pulse hammering. No meetings, no deadlines, no emails marked urgent. The absence of structure felt less like freedom and more like freefall. Her phone. Where was her phone? She found it in her purse, still turned off from yesterday. Maya held it in her palm, feeling its weight, debating. Then, with a decisiveness that surprised her, she opened the nightstand drawer and placed the phone inside, closing it with a soft click. Not yet. Not today. Through the window, the ocean stretched endlessly, its surface catching the morning light in a way that made it look like hammered pewter. Maya stood and moved closer, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. The beach below was empty except for a figure in the distance, someone walking a dog or maybe just walking. From this height, they looked like a single brushstroke on canvas, small and solitary against the vast expanse of sand and sea. The clock on the nightstand read 7:23. In her old life, she would have been at the gym by now, or already in the office, getting a head start on the day. The early bird gets the promotion. The first one in, last one out. All those mantras she'd lived by, believing they were the price of success rather than the symptoms of something breaking. Maya changed into jeans and a sweatshirt, brushed her teeth, and studied her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She looked tired. Not the acute exhaustion of a bad night's sleep, but something deeper, more fundamental. The kind of tired that lived in her bones, that had accumulated over years of pushing too hard, caring too much about things that ultimately didn't matter. Give it time, Dr. Chen had said. Healing isn't linear. It's messy and slow, and sometimes you'll feel worse before you feel better. Maya splashed cold water on her face and headed downstairs. The dining room was small, with just 4 tables and a sideboard against the wall where Helen had set out coffee, pastries, and fruit. Only one other table was occupied, an elderly man reading a newspaper, a cup of coffee steaming beside him. He glanced up as Maya entered, gave her a polite nod, and returned to his reading. Maya poured herself coffee from the thermal carafe, added cream from the small pitcher, and selected a blueberry muffin that looked homemade. She took a seat by the window, where she could see the street outside slowly coming to life. A mail truck drove past. A woman in workout clothes jogged by, ponytail swinging. Normal morning rhythms of a small town. The coffee was good, strong but not bitter. Maya sipped it slowly, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. Through the window, she watched a crow land on a fence post across the street, its head cocking as it surveyed its domain. Such a simple thing, a bird on a fence, but Maya found herself really looking at it, noticing the iridine of its feathers, the intelligence in its black eyes, the way it shifted its weight from foot to foot.
When did I stop noticing birds? The question felt absurd and profound at the same time. She'd been so focused on the big picture, career trajectory, revenue goals, market positioning, that she'd forgotten to look at anything small, anything immediate, anything that didn't serve a purpose beyond its own existence. First morning, Maya looked up to find Helen standing beside her table, a coffee pot in hand. Is it that obvious? You have the look of someone who's surprised she slept. Helen gestured to Maya's cup. Warm that up for you, please. Helen poured, then set the pot down and pulled out the chair across from Maya. Mind if I sit for a minute? I've been on my feet since 5. Of course not. It's your place. True, but that doesn't mean I can't ask permission. Helen settled into the chair with a small sigh of relief. She was wearing jeans and a chunky cardigan today, her gray hair in the same practical ponytail as yesterday. Up close, Maya could see the fine lines around her eyes, the silver studs in her ears, the calluses on her hands that spoke of years of physical work. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both looking out at the street. Maya wondered if Helen was going to ask questions, where she was from, why she was here, how long she planned to stay, but the older woman seemed content to just share space. Finally, Helen spoke. The town's not much to look at, I know, but it grows on you. Give it a few days. How long have you lived here? 42 years. Came here on my honeymoon and never left. She smiled at some private memory. My husband Frank had this romantic idea about running an inn by the sea. I thought he was crazy. I was a nurse in Sacramento, had a good career going, but he was persistent. Wore me down eventually. Is he? He passed 6 years ago. Heart attack. Quick, which I suppose was a mercy, though it didn't feel like one at the time. Helen's expression was matter of fact, not seeking sympathy. We had 36 good years, though. Built this place together. Raised 2 kids here. Saw a lot of life pass through these doors. Do your children live here? God, no. Helen laughed. Both of them couldn't wait to leave. My daughter's a lawyer in Portland. My son teaches physics in Boston. They visit twice a year, call once a week, and gently suggest I should sell this place and move somewhere more practical. As if practicality ever made anyone happy. Maya thought about her own mother, who'd built a successful real estate career and couldn't understand why her daughter would walk away from a 6-figure salary to find herself in some nowhere town. They'd had a painful phone conversation 3 days before Maya left, full of accusations and disappointments that Maya couldn't begin to address because she could barely articulate her own reasons for leaving. Do you ever regret it? Maya asked. Staying here instead of, I don't know, doing something bigger? Helen considered the question seriously. Bigger how? I ran a business, raised kids, helped people not in the dramatic way I might have as a nurse, but in the quiet way of giving them a place to rest when they needed it. I was happy. Frank was happy. That seems big enough to me. The simplicity of it made Maya's chest ache. When had she decided that happiness wasn't enough? That she needed achievement, recognition, impact? That her worth was measured in deliverables and promotions rather than moments of contentment? I don't know how to be happy, Maya said, surprising herself with a confession. I mean, I used to think I was happy, but it was really just accomplishment. Satisfaction at meeting goals. That's not the same thing, is it? Not even close. Helen stood, picking up the coffee pot. But the good news is happiness is a skill. You can learn it, or relearn it in your case. She paused, studying Maya with those calm blue eyes. You're going to be restless for a while. Your brain's going to keep telling. The elderly man at the other table stood, folded his newspaper precisely, and nodded to Maya again on his way out. She nodded back, struck by the quietness of the interaction. No need for small talk. No performance. Just 2 humans acknowledging each other's existence. I could get used to this, Maya thought. Then immediately, should I get used to this? Or am I just hiding? Dr. Chen's voice, running away or running toward. Maya still didn't know the answer. By the time she left the inn, The morning had warmed into something almost pleasant. The wind still blew steady off the ocean, but it had lost its bite. Maya walked down the main street, taking in details she'd missed yesterday. The faded painted signs on brick walls advertising businesses long gone. The hanging planters with winter-hardy flowers outside the post office. The community bulletin board thick with overlapping flyers about town meetings and lost cats, and someone offering piano lessons. There were more people out now than last night, though more was relative. Maybe a dozen locals going about their morning routines. An older woman swept the sidewalk in front of the general store. Two men in fishing gear stood by a truck, discussing something with serious expressions. A teenager on a skateboard carved lazy figures down the middle of the street, unbothered by the lack of traffic. Several people glanced at Maya as she passed, and a few nodded or said good morning. She returned the greetings awkwardly, and used to this kind of casual acknowledgement. In San Francisco, you could walk for blocks without making eye contact with anyone. Here, anonymity seemed impossible. She found herself walking toward the beach, without consciously deciding to. The road curved and descended, and suddenly, she was standing at the edge of a parking lot that bordered a long stretch of sand. The tide was out, just as Helen had said, exposing dark rocks and tide pools that gleamed in the morning light. Maya kicked off her shoes and left them by a fence post, then stepped onto the sand. It was cold and damp beneath her feet, packed firm by the retreating water. She walked toward the tide pools, picking her way carefully around the rocks. The first pool she came to was small, maybe 2 feet across, perfectly clear. Inside, she could see anemones like tiny flowers, their tentacles waving gently in the current. Small fish darted between strands of kelp. A purple starfish clung to a rock, so still it looked painted on. Maya crouched beside the pool, mesmerized. How long had it been since she'd really looked at anything? Since she'd allowed herself to be still enough to observe? In her work life, everything was about action, meetings, decisions, executions. Observation was just the first step toward strategy. There was no space for looking just to look, for noticing just to notice. She moved to another pool, larger this time. A crab scuttled sideways across the bottom, its movements both comical and purposeful. Barnacles clustered on the rocks like tiny volcanoes. The water reflected the sky, making the pool seem deeper than it was. "You found the good ones." Maya startled, looking up to see an older man standing a few feet away. He wore waders and a heavy jacket and carried a bucket in one hand. His face was deeply lined, weathered by decades of sun and salt, and his eyes were the same gray as the ocean. "Sorry, didn't mean to sneak up on you," he said. "Tom Kowalski. I run the bait shop." He gestured vaguely back toward town. "Maya Torres. I'm staying at the inn." "Ah, you're Helen's latest project." He said it kindly, with a small smile. "She always knows who needs what this town has to offer. Which is space, quiet, permission to stop performing." Tom crouched down beside another tide pool, setting his bucket aside. "I come out here most mornings. Check the pools, gather some bait for the shop, mostly just look. My wife thinks I'm crazy. Says I could do all that in 5 minutes if I wanted. But that's not the point, is it? What is the point? Being here, watching things be what they are. Remembering that the world's full of small miracles if you slow down enough to see them." He reached into the pool and carefully lifted a piece of kelp, examining something underneath. "Found an octopus in this pool once. Tiny thing, no bigger than my thumb. Sat here for an hour watching it change colors, trying to match the rocks. Best hour of that whole month." Maya thought about her weeks, her months, filled with back-to-back meetings, working lunches, late nights at the office. Had she had a single hour in the past year that she'd remember? A single moment where she'd been fully present instead of already thinking about the next thing? "You from the city?" Tom asked, releasing the kelp and sitting back on his heels. "San Francisco. I was a creative director at a tech company. I quit. Or took a leave. I'm not sure which yet." Tom nodded slowly. "That burnout thing everyone talks about?" "Something like that."
Yeah.
We see a lot of that here. The world speeds up, people try to keep pace, and eventually something breaks. He stood, picking up his bucket. The good news is breaks can be fixed. Not always back to original, but sometimes the repaired version works better than what you started with. He walked on down the beach, leaving Maya with the tide pools and her thoughts. She stayed there for a long time, moving from pool to pool, discovering small worlds. A cluster of mussels. A piece of driftwood covered in tiny white barnacles. A sand dollar, perfect and intact. Each discovery felt like a small gift. A reminder that beauty existed without needing to be monetized or optimized or shared on social media. Eventually, the cold drove her back up the beach. She retrieved her shoes, brushed the sand from her feet, and noticed that nearly an hour had passed. An hour spent doing nothing but looking at tide pools. The old Maya would have been horrified at the waste of time. The new Maya, whoever she was becoming, felt something close to contentment. On impulse, Maya walked back through town until she found Sienna's shop. It was easy to spot, the only storefront with actual color to it. The window display featuring an explosion of paint tubes, brushes, and canvases arranged in cheerful chaos. A hand-painted sign above the door read the palette in swirling letters. A bell chimed as Maya entered. The interior was small but packed with supplies. Shelves of paint organized by color, baskets of brushes, rolls of canvas, easels in various sizes. It smelled like turpentine and possibility. Classical music played softly from a speaker somewhere, and morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating dancing dust motes. "Hello," Maya called. "Back here." Sienna's voice came from behind a curtain at the rear of the shop. "Be right out." Maya wandered the aisles, running her fingers over tubes of paint, remembering the weight of a brush in her hand, the satisfaction of making a mark on a blank canvas. She'd loved painting once. Before art school had taught her that her work wasn't good enough, wasn't marketable enough, wasn't anything enough. Before she decided that design was more practical, that corporate creativity was a better path. When had she stopped believing in her own joy? Sienna emerged from the back room, wearing the same paint-splattered overalls as yesterday, her hair even more chaotic. "Maya, you came. I wasn't sure you would. Most people say they'll stop by and then don't." She wiped her hands on a rag. "I was just stretching some canvas. Want to see?" Before Maya could answer, Sienna had ducked back through the curtain, clearly expecting her to follow. Maya did, finding herself in a small workroom with a large table, more shelves, and several canvases in various states of completion leaning against the walls. "I make custom sizes for the few artists we have in town," Sienna explained, gesturing to a canvas stretched over a wooden frame on the table. "It's therapeutic, very methodical, helps quiet my brain when it gets too loud." Maya studied the canvas, the perfectly pulled corners, the even tension. "You do good work." "Thanks. It's not what I went to design school for, but it turns out I'm better at this than I ever was at branding packages for soulless corporations." Sienna's expression turned sheepish. Sorry, that came out bitter.
I'm trying to work on that.
No, I get it. Maya leaned against the table. I spent 7 years making rich companies richer, convincing people to buy things they don't need, care about brands that don't care about them. I was good at it, really good. And I have no idea what that says about me. That you're human? That you did what you thought you were supposed to do. Sienna set down the canvas. We're all just trying to figure it out, you know? Nobody has the answers. Some people are just better at pretending they do. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the classical music filling the space. Outside, Maya could hear the distant cry of gulls, the ever-present whisper of wind. So, Sienna said, her tone turning lighter, did you come to browse, or are you ready to get your hands dirty? I don't know if I remember how to paint.
Good.
That means you can't be precious about it. Come on. Sienna led her back into the main shop and started pulling items from shelves. A small canvas, a few brushes, tubes of acrylic paint in blues and greens and whites. Starter kit, $20. That's the broke artist discount I mentioned. Sienna, you can't. I absolutely can. Consider it an investment in your recovery. She stacked everything into Maya's arms. Don't overthink it. Just put paint on canvas. See what happens. If you hate it, you're only out $20. If you love it, come back and buy more supplies at full price. The materials in her arms, so simple, so full of potential. Part of her wanted to make excuses, to explain that she wasn't really a painter, that she'd probably just waste the supplies. But a larger part remembered standing in front of a canvas in her college apartment, losing hours to the pure joy of creating something just because she could. Okay, she said, $20. Sienna's smile was radiant. Excellent. Let me get you a bag. She disappeared behind the counter and emerged with a canvas tote. On the house. I have like 1,000 of these from some conference I went to years ago. As Sienna rang up the purchase, Maya noticed a painting on the wall behind the counter, an abstract seascape all in shades of blue and gray, with just a hint of gold where the light might be hitting the water. It was beautiful in a quiet way, more about feeling than representation. Is that yours? Maya asked. Sienna glanced over her shoulder.
Yeah.
I don't know what this place feels like to me. After a storm, when everything's settling back into itself. It's lovely. Thanks. Sienna handed her the bag. I paint what I need to see, if that makes sense.
Right now I need to see calm.
So that's what I make. Maya understood that completely. Maybe that's what art was supposed to be, not a career move or a portfolio builder, but a way of processing the world. A way of creating what you needed to exist. Outside the shop, bag in hand, Maya realized she was smiling. Just slightly, but genuinely. When had she last smiled about something as simple as buying art supplies? The day stretched ahead of her with no agenda, no requirements. She could paint. She could walk. She could sit in her room and stare at the ocean. She could do nothing at all. The freedom should have been terrifying. Somehow, in this moment, it wasn't. She spent the afternoon on the small table in her room, laying out the supplies Sienna had given her. The canvas was modest in size, maybe 11 by 14, but standing it up on the table, it looked vast, full of possibility and judgment in equal measure. Maya opened the paint tubes, squeezed small amounts onto a paper plate she grabbed from downstairs. Blue, green, white, and on impulse a tiny bit of black. She filled a glass with water from the bathroom, gathered her brushes, and sat down. Then she stared at the blank canvas for 20 minutes. Just put paint on canvas, Sienna had said. But where?
How?
What was she trying to say? What if it looked terrible? What if she'd wasted $20 and Sienna's kindness on something that would just prove she was right to give up painting years ago? Her phone buzzed in the drawer. Maya ignored it. Don't overthink it, Sienna had said. Maya picked up a brush, dipped it in blue, and made a single horizontal stroke across the canvas.
There. Done.
No longer blank. The stroke looked terrible, too bold, too dark, completely wrong. But it was something. Maya stared at it, feeling her perfectionism rising like bile in her throat. She wanted to throw the canvas away, start over, or better yet, forget the whole thing. Instead, she dipped the brush in water, mixed the blue with white until it lightened, and added another stroke. Then another. Slowly, without planning, without knowing where she was going, she began to build something that might have been an ocean, or sky, or the space between sleeping and waking. Time disappeared. The light through the window changed from harsh afternoon to golden pre-evening. Maya's back started to ache from hunching over the table, but she barely noticed. She was lost in the rhythm of it. Load brush, make mark, rinse, repeat. The painting was terrible by any objective measure. The proportions were wrong, the colors muddy in places, the composition chaotic. But it was hers. She'd made it. And somewhere in the process of making it, her breathing had slowed, her shoulders had dropped, and the constant static of anxiety in her mind had quieted to a whisper. When she finally set down the brush, it was because her hand was cramping and the light had faded too much to see properly. She stood, stretched, and looked at what she'd created. It was a mess, an abstract suggestion of water and sky and something that might have been land. But looking at it, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in years: pride. Not the corporate pride of a successful campaign or a glowing performance review. Just simple, uncomplicated satisfaction at having made something with her own hands.
Her phone buzzed again.
This time, Maya opened the drawer and took it out. She'd have to face the world eventually. Might as well be now, while she was feeling brave. 23 new messages. 15 missed calls. Her inbox showed 247 unread emails. Maya felt her chest tighten, the anxiety rushing back like water through a broken dam. All these people wanting things from her, needing responses, decisions, explanations. The weight of all those expectations felt crushing. She started to scroll through the messages, then stopped. Read just one from her former boss. Maya, we need to talk about the transition. The client is asking for you specifically on the rebrand. I know you said you needed time, but this is a major account.
Please call me.
The old Maya would have called immediately, would have put her own needs aside to handle the crisis, would have convinced herself that she was the only one who could do it right. The new Maya, this fragile, uncertain version who'd spent the afternoon painting badly and loved every minute of it, didn't want to call, didn't want to get pulled back into a world where her value was measured in billable hours and client satisfaction scores. Running away or running toward. Maybe Maya thought it could be both. Maybe she could run away from what was killing her and towards something that might let her live. She typed out a careful response. I understand the client's concern, but I'm not available for the rebrand. My leave is non-negotiable. I'm confident the team can handle it. Best, Maya. Her finger hovered over send for a long moment. Then she pressed it, feeling simultaneously liberated and terrified. The rest of the messages could wait. Most of them were variations on the same theme anyway. People who needed something from her, who couldn't understand why she'd walked away from success. There was one message she did read, though, from Priya. "Thank you for letting me know you're okay. I miss you, but I'm proud of you for doing what you need to do. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about taking care of yourself. Love you." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Real friends were rare in the world she'd inhabited, a world where networking was currency and everyone was potentially useful. Priya had been different, had seen her as a person, not a connection. She typed back, "Thank you. I miss you too. I'm trying. It's hard, but I think I'm where I need to be.
Talk soon. Love you."
Then she turned the phone off again, not just silent, but completely off, and put it back in the drawer. Dinner at the Kettle was busier than the night before. The weekend was approaching, and apparently even a dying coastal town got a small influx of visitors when people from nearby cities wanted a quiet escape. Maya recognized a few faces from yesterday, Tom from the tide pools, sitting at the counter with a newspaper. The elderly man from breakfast at a corner table. Ruth moving between tables with practiced efficiency. Maya slid into the same booth as yesterday, and Ruth appeared moments later with a menu and a knowing smile. "You're becoming a regular already," Ruth said. "Soup today is tomato basil. Fish special is grilled salmon with lemon butter. And before you ask, yes, the pie's good. Coconut cream today. I'll take the salmon. And save me a slice of pie." Smart woman. Ruth jotted down the order and moved on. Maya sat back, looking around the diner. At the other occupied tables, she saw couples eating in comfortable silence, a family with 2 young kids who were surprisingly well-behaved, a lone woman reading a book while methodically working through a bowl of soup. Normal people living normal lives. Nothing dramatic. Nothing urgent. Just the quiet business of being human. When had that stopped being enough for her? When had she decided that normal was the same as failure? The door chimed and Sienna burst in, bringing a gust of cold air and energy. She spotted Maya immediately and came over without asking, sliding into the opposite seat. "I knew you'd be here," she said, slightly breathless. "I was going to eat at home, but then I thought, it's Friday, I should celebrate the end of the week. Even though every day is basically the same when you're self-employed and have no life." "Did you paint?" The rapid-fire delivery made Maya smile.
"Yes."
"It's terrible." "Excellent. Terrible is the first step. What did you paint?" "I'm not sure. Maybe the ocean? Maybe my mental state? It's very abstract." "Even better. Abstract means you can't get it wrong." "How did it feel?" Maya considered the question seriously.
"Good."
"Frustrating. Meditative. Like I was doing something that mattered even though it objectively doesn't matter at all." That's exactly it. Sienna's eyes lit up. That's what art is supposed to be. Not everything needs a purpose. Sometimes the doing is the point. She grabbed a menu even though she clearly knew it by heart. "I'm getting the burger. Extra pickles. And the pie. Definitely the pie." Ruth appeared to take Sienna's order, and they chatted for a moment about some town gossip Maya didn't understand. Something about the peer committee and a disagreement over funding. Watching them, Maya felt a pang of something that might have been loneliness. Sienna belonged here, had connections, relationships, a place in the community. Maya was just passing through, a temporary resident in other people's lives. As if reading her thoughts, Sienna said, "You should come to the beach bonfire tomorrow night. It's a thing we do on the first Saturday of every month. Nothing fancy, just some of us locals and whoever's visiting. We make s'mores. Someone usually brings a guitar, and we pretend we're younger and cooler than we actually are. I don't know.
Come on.
You can't just hide in your room the whole time you're here. I mean, you can, but it's way more fun if you actually talk to people. Plus, you'll meet the rest of the misfits who've washed up in this town. We're a pretty interesting bunch. Maya wanted to refuse. The idea of socializing, of making small talk with strangers, made her want to retreat to her room and never leave. But she also recognized this impulse, the same one that had kept her from forming real connections in San Francisco, from letting anyone see beyond her professional persona. What time, she heard herself ask. Around 7. Beach parking lot. You can't miss it. Will be the people standing around a fire trying not to freeze. Sienna's smile was warm. You don't have to stay long, but I think you'll like it. Or, at least, I think it'll be good for you.
Which isn't always the same thing.
Their food arrived, and they ate together, conversation flowing easily between bites. Sienna talked about a commission she'd gotten, a local wedding, someone wanted watercolor portraits, and Maya found herself offering suggestions about composition and color, drawing on her years of design experience. It felt good to be useful without being essential, to contribute without carrying all the weight. By the time the pie came, and it was as good as advertised, Maya realized she'd gone several hours without thinking about work, without checking the phantom phone in her pocket, without feeling like she should be doing something more important. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not dramatic breakthrough moments, but quiet hours that added up to something new. That night, Maya stood at her window for a long time, watching the stars emerge as the sky darkened from blue to indigo to black. The ocean was invisible in the darkness, but she could hear it, that constant whisper of waves against shore, like the world breathing. Her terrible painting sat on the table, still damp in places. In the morning, she'd probably hate it, probably see all its flaws with cruel clarity. But right now, in this moment, it existed. She'd made something that hadn't existed before. That counted for something. Her phone sat in the drawer, silent and judging. Tomorrow she'd have to deal with more messages, more demands, more people who didn't understand why she needed this. But tonight, she could just be here. Just be Maya. Not creative director Torres. Not the woman who always had answers. Just a person standing at a window, looking at stars, learning how to exist without purpose. It wasn't enough yet. She wasn't healed. The anxiety still hummed beneath her skin. The perfectionism still whispered criticisms. The fear that she'd made a terrible mistake still woke her at 3 a.m. But she'd survived day 2. She'd made terrible art and eaten good food and had a real conversation with someone who didn't want anything from her except her company. It was a start. Maybe that's all healing was, a series of small starts, over and over, until one day you looked back and realized you'd traveled further than you thought possible. Maya climbed into bed, pulled the lavender-scented sheets up to her chin, and listened to the ocean until sleep finally came. Tomorrow she'd face another day, another choice between who she was and who she might become. Tonight, she just breathed.